So I'm delighted to introduce my friend Jen Kozak. She cares about her students deeply and works as hard as she can to meet their needs. And this is very obvious how passionate she is about her practice because she gave birth to a beautiful baby just a few weeks ago, and yet she's here sharing with us today. So her dedication and kindness is evident to everyone she meets. Her question is, or was, how can I build self-confidence and foster independence in my students?
So just my presentation is mostly about my journey and some of the conclusions I come to, some of the things that I hope to practice in the future when I return back to work, and I'll be ending off with kind of what I've learned and where I'm going from there. So bear with me. Hopefully you enjoy it. I started my journey back in the fall PD when Liz and Crystal were doing a session about barn, trying to get interest for it and also to explain what barn was. It seemed really neat. I thought that it would be a great opportunity to improve my classroom, to have some release time to actually come up with lessons, come up with new resources, hear from other people, and at the time, we just recently found out that we were going to be expecting a new baby. So all of this was really exciting point in my life. And then second semester came when it was time to sign up for barn, and I pitched it to my husband. By this time, I'm about 5 months pregnant. I have no energy. I'm traveling between schools, and I'm just exhausted. And he said, "This is the worst idea I've ever heard." And I said, no, because if you're accepted in the program, then you can try it again like another year. You like get to have first dibs, and I'm like, it'll be really cool because I'll have this release time. Yeah, no. So that's kind of where my journey started and why I signed up for it. And all of those things did happen, and I'm really glad that I did the program. But as I said, I didn't have as much time as I thought I would. We almost need the whole summer or something. Maybe this year off will be the amount of time I need. I'm not sure. So coming to the first meeting, we were asked to think about what we might want our question to be. So the main problems that I saw within my classrooms, and I say classrooms because I had multiple rooms, which was one of the problems. I also had multiple schools. So I was traveling between Saugeen District and also Owen Sound District on my lunch hour in order to get full contract. And then that moved from going from Owen Sound District to Chesley on my lunch hour in order to have full contract split between LTOs and permanency. So I was dealing with different schools as well as different classrooms with different curriculums, being thrown into classrooms while people went off on leave for whatever reason, as well as being thrown into different classrooms in order to secure contracts. So I'm transitioning in and out at awkward times, not the beginning of the semester, and that was why I felt that a lot of these problems existed. So cell phones is a huge issue in all classrooms, I found out, not just mine, which was comforting. And one of the main issues that I had was every school has a different rule about cell phones. So for example, in Chesley, everyone has technology in the form of an iPad, which is perfectly acceptable, and you're encouraged to go to a paperless school, and kids are on their iPads all the time, and you really don't know what they're doing on their iPads. Then when I was at Owen Sound, their rule was no technology essentially, unless the teachers asked you to bring it out. All phones are to be off and away, and basically we should never see them, which my first experience with Owen Sound when I went up there was all my students walked into the classroom, and I'd never had this happen before, but they were looking for all the outlets, and there was a power bar that was, for the projector, and they're all plugging their phones in to charge them up during class. So I read the school rule before I went in, but my experience with it was very different, because that's not just a culture that happens. They didn't just see me and think, oh, I'll just go plug my phone in. So that was really confusing for me and hard to navigate through. Another problem that I had, just in teaching in general, was the amount of marking that I was doing, especially because I was transitioning in and out of classes. Sometimes I would come in a month before report cards were due, so I've never met these kids and I'm going to have to write report cards on them. So we need to get things in so I can see what they're capable of doing. Also, I was using marking as a behavior management strategy, so if things weren't going well, I'd say, okay, we're going to hand this in at the end of class so I can mark it. And for some students that works really well, they buckle down and they do the assignment, but at the end of the day you have 30 papers now that you need to mark that you were thinking would be a short little assignment that they would learn from and you could move on. And finally, I had what came to be known as the mean girls. So the mean girls exist in all schools. They don't have to be girls, sometimes they're boys, but I found mostly that they're girls, which I thought was because I was a female teacher, which I'll explain later that it's not a female thing. But mean girls exist for many different reasons, which I found out. But one of the main reasons that I was told mean girls exist by someone who I highly respect, who has taught a lot more than I have, is because they lack self-confidence. So that kind of took me to meeting day one. So we came and we shared our ideas and what we thought we were going to do in our stories. And if anyone remembers, I had meltdown number 1 and had to leave the room because I was bawling my eyes out. Which was really embarrassing for me because I don't think I've ever cried in front of a stranger before. I'm very closed off and I don't share those emotions. So meeting day 1 did not go well. But I came up with the fact that I wanted to build up self-confidence in my students without total reliance on the teacher. And the reasons that I wanted to do this was because it would help my students to become independent. It would help my students develop the relationship skills and resources that they needed for current transitions and following secondary school. So I wanted my students to have self-confidence so that if I had to leave the classroom and another teacher had to come in, they still felt that they could succeed, that the confidence that they had shouldn't rely on the person in front of them, that it should rely on themselves. Which again was something that I was having trouble with because as I left classes, I was still getting frantic emails from students being like, the new teacher doesn't tell us how to do this, or the new teacher won't meet with me before school, and that's the only time I can come in and stuff. So I felt like a lot of their confidence in my classroom for some reason was really linked to me and how I managed my classroom, and I wanted them to understand that it's not about the teacher, it's about themselves, because obviously that was a problem. And I'm still getting emails today, can you correct this for me, or can you self-edit this for me? And I'm like, that's not self-editing, that's me editing. So that's something that, again, I built up the relationship between myself and my students really, really well, and I'm proud of that. I wasn't proud of that on meeting day 1. I was trying to get away from that, but I realized that's part of the process for some students. Also, it helped me to have more time because they'll trust themselves to solve their problems or to be able to do the task at hand without needing me to walk them through each step. It will build my self-confidence to see them succeed. And finally, it will help with behavior management and the mean girls in the classroom, because at this point in time, I'm still thinking that the mean girls is linked to self-confidence. So, because I'm very research-based, my first day I spent a lot of time looking at whether or not building self-confidence in students was important. So I did a bunch of research, this is my page from the first day, and found out, obviously, yes, that it is very important in our students. So if you're feeling good about yourself, it gives you the feeling of self-worth, it builds self-esteem. This leads to self-respect and happiness about your life, which leads to the ability to assert yourself to living a happy and good life, which is essentially what we want all students to be able to do, no matter what walk of life they're going to. So it seemed like a pretty obvious question, but again, I didn't want to spend my release days and all of this time researching something if it wasn't going to lead to the answer. So that is why we started there. Then I also looked at how can I build self-confidence in my students. So I'm sure we all know Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. I took it in Teachers College. And one of the things that I find really frustrating about this is that I can't control what goes on outside of my classroom. So I can't control if they have a house, which some of my students don't. I can't control if they have clean air. So a lot of my students are addicted to smoking. They legitimately don't have fresh, clean air in their lungs most of the time, and that really does affect their ability to learn in the classroom. If you're sitting there counting down the minutes before you can go out and have another smoke break, or if you're lacking oxygen, which is feeding your brain, that really affects their physical being in the classroom. Food, I can control. I allow eating in my classroom. I also have been known to have food in the classroom that I'll bring. So if we're doing something important that day, I'll often bring in muffins or cookies or something and get them on a bit of a sugar high to get their brains pumping in order for them to complete their tests or their exam, etc. So on days when it's really important that they can be the best that they can be, I do provide food in the classroom. I encourage students to have water in the classroom, and sleep, again, is something I can't control. However, I have been known if a student falls asleep in my classroom to let them sleep, because I figure that that's what they need, and often it's a student that really isn't contributing anyways. So if they're sleeping, I sometimes let that happen. Love and belonging and safety are something that I feel as a teacher I can control in my classroom. I do make sure my students are relatively safe. I don't allow them to hurt one another. If they are getting unsafe, I send them to the vice principal. And love and belonging was something that I worked with regards to respect. And then finally, if we're able to kind of control these things, or at least give them a sense of them in the classroom, we should be able to move on to having higher self-esteem and being able to contribute, which is where I wanted my classroom to get to. So I looked up a lot of different activities or ideas and research again on the very first day of how I could build self-confidence in my students. So some of the things that came up were offer students time to reflect after lessons. So thinking about, what went right, what was I successful at, what can I improve on? There's a need to feel secure. And one of the ways that you can do this is to not interrupt the student and do not correct the student, which I was the queen of. So I interrupt my students when they're talking all the time, and I try to offer them advice, and I try to tell them, what I would do if I was in their situation. But the truth of it is that I'm not in their situation. So I need to let them come to their conclusions. And one of the pieces of advice that came up when I polled my students on different questions was one student said, I hate it when teachers tell me what to do. Sometimes I just want to rant. And that was really self-reflective for myself. You need to model through your demeanor and through your responses the work and the actions that you're expecting. And I know that we all get to that point where, especially in secondary school, you say to a kid, just do the work so I can give you the credit. Or just do the work so you can get the credit. Let's move on with our life. So I understand that you don't like English, but the government says you need it, so let's just get through it. And that's not what we should be saying to our students, especially because that's not truly how we feel about our subjects that we're passionate about. I love English, so why am I saying the government says you need this credit? Let's get through it. I should be saying to them, English is really cool. These are the reasons I love it. Why do you think you might like it? And kind of continuing from that. Set obtainable goals. One of the things that came up in my research when I polled my students again was that they hate it when teachers give you goals that aren't realistic for you. So instead of having your class separated into this is an obtainable goal for you or for an individual, you kind of set out the whole lesson of this is where you're going to get to. And some of the students feel like that's not where they're ever going to get to, so instead of trying to find a goal on the stream of the lesson, they just kind of shut down. The only competition is you setting SMART goals. Try a learning menu or a choice board, which is really cool. I can see how that works in elementary school, and I'd like to make it work in secondary school. Be positive, be optimistic, be encouraging, be honest. If a student knows a lot about information or about a topic, ask them. Really highlight their abilities when you can. So there was a lot that went on with regards to how to build up their self-confidence, and one of the main things that came up was icebreakers, which is why I have the picture there, because I believe in icebreakers. And I thought I was doing icebreakers well, but as you can see by my picture, my icebreakers kind of turned my classroom into this. It made groups in my classroom, groups that weren't necessarily friendly groups later on. What usually happened was groups that already existed outside of my classroom, so people who were already friends, or people who were quote unquote the mean girls ended up getting on their own little iceberg together and doing the icebreakers and getting to know each other better, but it didn't help my classroom to come together as a positive space, which is, as you can see, love and belonging is the second on the pyramid. So my icebreakers were not creating love and belonging, which I think is part of the reason that I was off on the wrong foot. So I left here and I got back to the school and I got my supply notes and I wrote down in my book, wow, today when I returned back to school, I was pulled aside to be told that some of my students in my class were not acting well for the supply teacher and were treating the librarian badly. The teacher said, wow, you have some mean girls in your classroom. I guess my question has some true validation. So I had a lot of supply notes over the half semester that I was working with this class because I was out for multiple doctor's appointments, as well as the fact that I came here for the 4 different days. And every supply note that I came back to talked about the mean girls in my class. And I didn't even use that language in my notes. I never said, watch out for these girls in class. I just wrote my notes how I usually would, said, this is a good class. They can be very respectful. These are the classroom rules that we have. And I would come back every day with these notes about how there were mean girls in my class. One supply teacher even went as far to say, I hope that these girls look back on their high school career and realize just how mean they were, ... But I feel they won't, and that they will always just be mean girls. And I pretty much wanted to cry at that point because they're not mean girls to me anymore in my classroom, but they're still acting mean out in society or for other teachers. And also I wanted to cry because this was a male teacher who would be mean for me, and I always thought that mean girls didn't exist for males because they're stronger and bolder, and I thought that they had more control of a classroom than what I did. So that was a really big oh wow moment, and as I said, it's justified my attempt to try and get rid of the mean girls in my classroom, which is kind of what my question morphed into. So, because my icebreaker activities had sucked and they weren't going very well, and I had mean girls in my classroom, and other girls who I thought were really nice were turning into, now I realize, mean girls because I've created divisions in my classroom by trying to make them come together, which Ottawa Sound is really difficult right now because of their situation of 2 schools that had come together. So it's not just me in a new school environment, it's a new school environment in total. And I have a grade 12 class. By grade 12, you're supposed to feel really comfortable. You're supposed to have lots of, hopefully, connections and friends within the school, and none of that existed in my classroom. I still had kids wearing school clothing from their previous school, which is fine, but they would show up and they'd be like, OSCBI, they suck. West Hill was way better. And then they'd be like, we're in West Hill now, it sucks. And they're like, no, this isn't what West Hill was like. West Hill was better before you guys got here. And I was like, okay, so no more icebreaker activities because it's not working. So I moved on to looking at my curriculum, which I was lucky I was teaching life skills management. So I thought, this is awesome. We're going to look at the Book of Awesome. We're going to look at The Secret, and we're going to look at setting SMART goals. And we did that, and I collected their reflections afterwards. And what I found, especially when we looked at the Book of Awesome, the reflection was, was my day better than I thought it would be after we had our awesome lesson? So they were asked to write down all of the things that they thought were awesome, and then to go out into the world for the day for 24 hours and look for other little things that were awesome. So better than I thought, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. In between, 1 person. And we have 2 down here. I was tracking 3 mean girls. This is 2 of them, and the 3rd was away that day. So, Book of Awesome, not helping mean girls. The Secret, having a positive attitude, not helping the mean girls. They're just as mean in class. I can't see any positivity from them. And when we did our goal setting, again, their goals were great for them. But I didn't really feel that they were going to help them with the mean girl part that I'm trying to get rid of. We did a whole lesson on self-esteem, because that's what I thought I was trying to foster in my classroom. And this was really shocking to me. I didn't realize this before. That if you have a really low self-esteem, your achievement level is low because you feel that you can't achieve. Makes sense. But also if you have a really high self-esteem, your achievement level is really low, which I didn't realize. And the reason for that is because you feel that you are amazing and that you know everything. So you're not going to achieve any greater than what you already are because you have no desire to do any better. So the actual perfect self-esteem is in the middle here, which is the medium self-esteem. And that's because you recognize that you have room for improvement, but you're not so low in self-esteem that you don't feel that you can improve. So that was really interesting, and it comes up a little bit later in my research as well. So I came back for meeting day number 2. And what I basically come to by looking at my class was that I thought I needed to remove myself more from the process. However, I'm now thinking that for some students, one-on-one conferences and relationship building are the key. So the mean girls are no longer mean to me, they're still mean to other people. So if I take away that relationship building, which was kind of what I was trying to get away from, in a sense, because it takes up a lot of my time, then I don't think I'm going to be able to help the mean girls. And if anything, I don't think that they're going to respect me if I take that piece away. So my problem on day 2 when I got here was that helping students one-on-one, meeting with them, conferencing with them, it takes up a lot of time. And time is not something that I have in my life right now, especially during second semester when I'm leaving at the change of the term to go off on maternity leave, as well just because I have a 2-year-old at home at that time. So as I said, time's not something that I have. So I came on day 2 trying to figure out how I was going to make more time. And I decided that I was going to make more time by getting myself to have effective, efficient, and positive marking. So we're back to our 3 problems in the classroom. I'm trying to tackle the mean girls, and I decided that if I can improve my marking, I will have more time for the mean girls, and that's going to solve the problem. I was wrong. So I spent the whole day, came in, Crystal, remember, I had like bags upon bags of marking.
You had so much marking.
And I had all this research, and I was like, I'm going to read this research, and it's going to tell me how to be effective, efficient, and positive in my marking, and then I'm going to do all of this marking. And I left that day having not touched any of the marking, and I learned a lot about positive marking and how I was not a positive marker. So, for example, as an English teacher, you want to circle every single thing that a child has done wrong with regards to spelling and grammar, and you want to tell them in the margins how to fix it. That's not something that you do with positive marking. I found out that positive marking is centered around picking 3 things that you're looking for when you bring in an assignment, and you only focus on those 3 things. And those 3 things shouldn't be the same 3 things for every single student. They should be different based on every student and where they're at. In addition, you should limit yourself to telling them 1 thing to improve on and probably around 3 to 4 things that they did really well. So when you get your work back, if you can get your students to look at the feedback more than the mark, they should leave feeling that they have succeeded despite what the mark is on the paper. So that was really interesting for me. Efficient marking, I've gotten a lot better by working in levels versus, having a specific grade for each thing. So if you have a title, it's worth 3 marks. If you have this, it's worth 2 marks. Levels really do save a lot of time. So if anyone's looking for ways to mark, I suggest levels, especially in the secondary level. So that's something that I'm going to research more and practice a lot more, different ways to be effective and efficient. But with regards to positive marking, those are the hints that I found. So I went back to my classroom, and I'm now trying to create self-esteem through positive marking. And I thought I was doing really, really well. And I was meeting with my students, and I was talking to them about their assignments. And then I looked at my mark book, and I had no mark for the mean girls, because the mean girls haven't handed anything in. So I'm doing positive marking, which is great for my class, but it's not helping my 3 targeted students, once again. Also, with my 3 targeted students, I've noticed that their cell phone is running rampant in the classroom. They're texting people to come and walk around the halls with them, which I'm addressing slightly, mostly by opening up the door and saying, "Hello, so-and-so. It's about the time that you usually come to the classroom to pick up so-and-so. Please make sure they're back in 5 minutes from the bathroom." So I'm addressing it in a comical manner, because I don't want to say, "No, you may not go to the bathroom. No, I know that you're on your cell phone and you're just meeting someone in the hallway." So I'm trying to make light of the situation. I've talked to them about their cell phone usage in class and how they're not getting their work done, so that I feel that that's a problem. I talked to them about using their cell phone in a positive way. So for example, if you feel that you can't write down the answers for this worksheet, would you like to use the microphone function on your cell phone and dictate your answers? So I'm trying to incorporate the technology in a positive manner. Nothing is working. So meeting day 3, when I came over to the board office, I've decided that I'm going to research if there's a relationship between cell phone usage and self-esteem. And there's lots of studies out there that show that there is a huge relationship between it. Most teenagers, if not all teenagers, are addicted to their cell phone in one way or another. But what I found was that students who have a low self-esteem are connected to their cell phone in a much different way. So their self-esteem becomes dependent on their cell phone and the world that it creates. So I've got a picture there. How was your day? And good, and yours? So a lot of students who have a low self-esteem only communicate through their cell phones. They're unable to communicate face-to-face with other individuals. Their world is wrapped up on their media usage, living in a fantasy world, which again is created through their cell phone. A lot of students who have low self-esteem use their cell phones for safety, which is why when you take a student's cell phone away from them, they become very irate. So for example, the student who constantly had someone coming to the room when they asked to go to the bathroom, I don't know for sure, but maybe there are mean girls or other people who are in the bathroom that bother them. So they text a friend and say, "Hey, I have to go to the bathroom," or "Hey, do you want to go for a walk?" And then as they're walking around the halls, they're like, "Oh, I just have to go to the bathroom." And that person, follows them in the bathroom. I don't know why they constantly need to have that person walk around the hall with them. Maybe it's just a mental break from the classroom. Maybe there's another mean girl in my classroom and they need that friend to come so that they can talk about how so-and-so's been staring them down for the last 75 minutes. And they just needed a break. So self-esteem is greatly linked to cell phones, I found out. And as I said, people with low self-esteem, their cell phone is almost more a part of them than it is a tool for them. And my research, which I'm getting to, confirmed that as well. So I left here meeting day 3, and I have all of this research about how marking creates self-esteem or can take away from self-esteem, how cell phones, again, are linked to self-esteem, and I still have my mean girls in my classroom. And this is where I had Renee Brown's complete breakdown that she talked about in her presentation. And I left here on day 3 from coming over here thinking not uplifted at all, because I have all this research and I don't know what to do with any of it now. Everything that I thought I was going to start with, so I thought I had 3 separate problems, I've now realized they're all one problem, possibly. They're all linked together. How can I tackle all this? There's literally 3 weeks until I'm going off on mat leave, so when am I going to tell you people? When I do my presentation. And so yeah, I'm having a complete and utter breakdown. And One of my students came up to me when I came back to work, and she said to me, I don't like the new teacher in our one class. So I had to transition out of a class in one sound that I was teaching into a class in Chesley in order to secure permanency. So I had to leave my psychology, sociology, and anthropology class, a grade 11 class. And she said, I don't like my new teacher. The new cell phone rule is just ridiculous. And I was like thinking to myself, maybe the new cell phone rule is awesome because my cell phone rule doesn't work. And she said, this teacher comes from a private school, a Dutch Reformed private school, and she's treating us like private school students. I'm not a private school student. And I said, yeah, well, every teacher has different rules, you're just gonna have to roll with it. And I went home that night and I had a nightmare, and my nightmare involved eating cake. I was still super pregnant at this point, and I had brought my students in chocolate cake, and they were all yelling at me that they didn't want to eat the chocolate cake, they wanted vanilla cake. And I just woke up really angry because I ate all the ice cream and we didn't have any vanilla ice cream, which would have solved that problem, I thought. But I realized that I'd been doing all this research, and I've been looking at all these studies, and I don't know who these students are. These could be Catholic school students. These could be Dutch Reformed school students. These could be university level classes, and I teach mostly your college students or workplace students. So all of this research that I've been doing, although it confirms what I'm already seeing in my classroom, I don't actually know who these students are. So my nightmare and what my student had said to me was basically that I could be pulling or looking at chocolate cake, and I have vanilla cake in front of me. So I went to my class and I told them about Barn, and I told them not that I was trying to fix the mean girls in my class, because I thought that would be pretty mean to point out that I thought there were mean girls in class, but I told them my original question, which was that I was trying to facilitate self-confidence, and that I was having a breakdown. And that I was doing all this research on how to facilitate self-confidence. I told them that I found out it was linked to cell phones. I found out that it's linked to marking. I found out that it's linked to the environment in your classroom. That's what I categorized the mean girls as. And I said to them, I have no clue. I have no clue what to do with my research. I have no clue where to go with my research. And I think I need your help. And they were all really excited to help me, which was nice. So I subconsciously noticed when I was going back through to create this presentation that instead of calling this research question day one, I called it research day one, which is basically how I felt. I felt like I had done nothing up until this point, and we were just starting over. So research day one, the question was, what is the purpose of a teacher? What do you need teachers to do? What do you not need teachers to do? What do you wish every teacher knew? And anything else that would make you want to be in school / in class. So I'm going right back to the start of what the heck is a teacher, because I personally felt at this point in my journey that I had no clue and I didn't know what my role was in the classroom. So all my students filled in the questions. Some of them wrote more than I'd seen them write all semester. I don't know if it's because I said I need your help and we had that relationship, or if it was because this is all about them, and we know teenagers are all about themselves. So I'm not sure what made them write stuff, but they did. Then when I got the results, I read through all of them, and it was really cool. It was really interesting. I felt like I learned a lot about my students. I felt like a lot of the problems I was seeing in my classroom were answered through these questions. So each individual, based on what they think a teacher is, really affects how they act in your classroom. So if a teacher, for them, is someone there that they think is there to help them, then those are the students that I found came for extra help. If they think that a student or a teacher is just there to kind of give them a lesson and then they take the lesson where they want to go, those were my independent learners in the classroom. So it really helped me to see what my students thought a teacher was. Then, for lack of a better word, I, again, had too much data. So I went through and I picked out 3 girls, because I'm focusing on girls at this point, who I would want my girls to be like, and 3 girls that I did not want my girls to be like, for, again, lack of better. So the girls that I want my girls to be like for these questions answered things like, they're there to support you. They are there to give encouraging feedback or show where things need improvement. They're there to create positive learning, be understanding and actually care about us and our success, not just be teaching because they have to. Be willing to put in extra time if we are. Be able to negotiate. Treat us like, so they're not supposed to treat us like we're stupid when we don't understand what they are saying. They're not there to bring us down or single us out when we don't understand or for any reason. They're not there to take away personal items. Phones was mentioned. That every school and class learns differently. Teachers should not judge. Teachers should try and help us succeed instead of challenge us to the point of tears. I personally need teachers to listen to my questions and help. When a teacher can help one-on-one when you are stressed or having a hard time, I believe that that boosts my confidence on whatever topic. I do not need teachers to baby me. I do not need teachers to sit at the desk and do nothing. I really like the Me project. Challenging or stressing us does not help us learn. Don't make things harder than they need to be. So these are girls that I want my girls to be like, and this is what they feel a teacher's there for. In comparison, my mean girls said, I don't want teachers to pressure me to do things that I mentally can't do, like speaking in front of a class. So they feel that they will never be able to speak in front of a class. I need teachers to be more focused on teaching us things that we need to know to get through life. I wish every teacher knew that sometimes students struggle more than others, which makes it hard, especially when you have anxiety. And that person actually has documented anxiety on their IEP. Try and keep me with a friend, otherwise I will likely get too nervous to focus on anything else. I do not need teachers to yell at me. Please take me aside and tell me what I did wrong. So it's not that you shouldn't tell them what to do wrong, but make sure that it's done in a very personal manner. I wish that every teacher knew that not everyone is good with group work. And finally, if it's with strangers, the group work, it will literally terrify some students so that they're unable to function in group work. So I took this is my mean girls, this is my girls that I want my girls to look like, and then, as you can see on the Venn diagram, things that came up as being the same. So what came of all of this, as you can see from the diagram, is that the mean girls seem as a group to have low confidence. They use a lot of negative suggestions, or like negative language, sorry. They have little suggestions on how to improve the teacher as a whole, where the other girls used a lot of positive language and they suggested ways that teachers could improve the classroom. So the mean girls almost seem like they don't think the classroom can improve. These are things that make me mad about it, but they don't suggest ways to improve it. And they lay a lot of blame on both themselves and the teacher, where the other girls seem to accept the blame for both themselves and the teacher, and as I said, make suggestions. So this really goes towards the hierarchy of self-esteem, I believe, because as I said, everyone lacks self-esteem, yet the girls that I want my girls to be like seem to be in that middle category, whereas the mean girls seem to be, at this point, on the low part. And I'll get to a fourth mean girl in a minute, which kind of blows this out of the water a little. So then we did research day 2. The questions that I then posed to the class were looking at cell phones. How do you feel about the school rule? I was doing this at Owen Sound, so no phones in class, all phones need to be off and away. Is this rule followed by all staff? Is this rule followed by all students? Is this rule followed by you? What should the rule be? Should it change per class or be the same for the whole school? If a teacher feels that your cell phone is causing a problem with your learning, what should they do? So again, the girls that I want my girls to be like answered things like, at the end of it all, it's our marks. That would be effective. So if we use our time poorly, then it's our problem. So they're talking about the fact that their marks will be affected. The mean girls said, point blank, it's bullshit. If you want to be on your phone, go right ahead. The teacher isn't failing, the students is. So again, you can see the self-confidence thing, because the mean girls feel that if you're on your phone, you fail. And that's their fault, and that's their problem, and that they're okay with that. Whereas the girls who I feel have self-confidence see it as it's going to affect their mark. Not that they're going to fail, which I think is a really big difference in language. The girls who I want my girls to be like, It bothers me because sometimes teachers make us use them, their phones, for research or for their use, and it's okay then, but any other time it's not. So again, they're noticing how the rules are changing in different classrooms, and they don't like that. I and many other students feel more concentrated and focused when we use it for music, so they're using their phones as a tool. I think the rule should be rather that it's off and away during lesson time, and if we choose to use them during independent work time, then that's our call, which is the rule that I have in my classroom. So that was nice to see, but the problem that I'm seeing in my classroom is that they're out all the time for some students. I don't always follow this rule. If we are doing a lesson or talking about a topic that I struggle with, then yes, I follow the rule. So when it's something I don't understand, I make sure that I'm listening. Sometimes we can use our phones for work. They, the teachers, should suggest to you to put it away, but from then on it's your choice because it is your phone. So again, the phone is being used as a tool. The students use their phones to get away from the stress in the classroom or to get the answers, then move on with their questions, they said. If you're in a dangerous class like woodshop or you're getting instructions, put your phone down. And then somebody else suggests that you do a deal where if you have all your work done, then you can use your phone for the last 10 to 15 minutes of class. The Mean Girls, as I said, had stated that it was bullshit. That it doesn't matter to me what the rule should be. I'm going to be on my phone no matter what. Leave me alone and mind your own business as a teacher. Teachers need to realize children learn by mistakes they make, so if they want to waste their time on their phone and fail, there isn't much that you can do. I believe the rule should be the teacher's decision. I think they should be asked to put it away, and if nothing works, get them to put it on your desk. I think, something important to note about the student who said that. If you actually were to take their phone, they would blow up and they would not give it to you and they would go to the office. I had that happen because I read, I should put it on my desk, so I'm going to try this. And it was an escalated situation. So that rule apparently does not apply for them. They think that it should for other people. I think it, as in no phones off and away, is just a hopeful thought, as this generation is going to bring their phones regardless. The rule should be that we are allowed to use them as we please, but if we don't pay attention and fail the class, that's our own fault. And maybe bring it up, the use of the cell phone being a problem, but after that, let those who don't listen fail. So that's how the Mean Girls perceive that the problem should be fixed. So again, there was some commonalities that came up. There was a lot of things that were, again, very negative language. As I said, with the student, I tried to take it away and it equaled a blow up. And kind of what came out of this is that I felt the Mean Girl responses were irrational because, again, they were making up rules that they weren't willing to follow. The cause and effect was very bad because they always saw that it was going to be the worst cause. You'll notice that when I was reading off those responses, there's at least 6 people that, or like 6 out of those 3 girls in their responses 6 times said, you fail, or it's okay to fail, and I will fail, that's fine. So again, it's very emotional. The phone, I think, does equal me, and it's all about me. So if you take away the phone, you're essentially taking away a part of them, or something that they're, as I said, irrationally or emotionally connected to. The girls that I want my girls to be like understood that it was, I felt like they were responsible responses. Their cause and effect was reasonable, so the fact that your mark will be lower versus just that if you have your phone out in class, you're going to fail. So they again show the ability to have reason, to have control over their phone. Their responses dealt with the whole class and others, as well as the fact that they constantly refer to their phone as a tool. Something else that was really interesting when they were doing the questions, one of the nice girls, for lack of a better word, put up her hand and said, when you say do all teachers follow this rule, do you mean do they make their class follow the rule, or do they themselves not have their phone out? And I hadn't even thought of teachers having their phone out. I leave my phone in my office, so it's never out. And I just thought that was really interesting because they, again, were looking at their classroom and looking at the teacher as a part of the classroom, and do they follow the same rules as we do? So the final day of research that I did with my class was, why do teachers mark schoolwork? Would you do schoolwork if it was not marked? Do you just look at the mark or the comments as well? Which is more important, the marks or the comments, and why? What do you think about late marks? Should they exist or why not? What about due dates? Do we need them? If not, what would we do instead? And then finally, I was teaching careers at the time, and this was something that had come up in my careers class with regards to soft skills. Employers complain that workers aged 16 to 25 overall do not arrive to work on time. Their cell phones need to be locked up. They do not meet deadlines, and they cannot communicate with customers. They say this is due to the way high schools are being run. Do you agree or disagree with the statement? Is it the teacher's fault? And why or why not? So are we not preparing you properly to go out into the world of work? So this question became the most telling. So the girls that I want my girls to be like stated that marks were there to give students marks to go towards report cards to show progress and to see how they are doing. I wouldn't worry as much if they never got actual marks on their assignments. I would still do some of the assignments, but probably not as much, or with as much effort. I like to look at both the comments and the marks. The comments are good because they can help you improve for the next time, and to see when and why you lost the marks. It, as in marking, also shows that the teacher actually cared to look over and give you feedback. I think late marks are good because it's not really fair to the people who handed them in on time to receive the same mark. I think that we need them, as in due dates. Marks work because the students who deserve get the justification that they need and they know what they're supposed to do. Yes, I look at the comments. I like to see what teachers say. The comments are more important because if a student was to try really hard, they would get positive feedback. I think that if you are late handing something in, marks should be deducted, but some exceptions should exist. And finally, we need due dates to stay organized. In comparison, the Mean Girls felt that we do schoolwork because the government feels kids should be forced against their will to do work. I don't do any work that I don't want to do. And I don't care if it's marked or not, because most likely I'm not going to do it anyways. This comment is not from one of my original Mean Girls. This comment, when I read over the student's work, I realized that she was a mean girl. She swore at me in her comments. I'm not going to share them. I told the students they were allowed to swear, that I just wanted to know their honest feedback. And the student came into class every day that she was there, and she was dressed really nicely, and sometimes she participated in discussion, and I honestly thought that she was a girl that I would want my girls to be like. And then I started reading her responses, and I looked at the name. They didn't have to put their names on things, but I looked at their name, and I thought, whoa, like, where is this coming from? I don't expect this from the student. And then I went to my mark book, and I realized that she hadn't handed in probably 75% of the assignments, and she was failing my class. And I looked at her attendance and realized that it wasn't as stellar as I thought. So this student, if you had have just talked to me in the hall, I would have thought was doing really well based on what I saw in class. But when I actually looked at the attendance and the marks, she was fitting in with the Mean Girls. And when I read what she supposedly really feels, she was extremely mean. So we had a little conversation and we talked about some of her responses. And what I've concluded about her based on my limited knowledge is that she is at the other end of the hierarchy, and she is so self-confident about herself. She told me that the most important thing for her at this point in life is that she look good every day, because if you look good, you'll do well. And I think that her self-esteem is so high that that's why she's a mean girl. So that became a realization in my work, and something that I'll have to think about later. The marks and sometimes the comments, if I can read the teacher's messy handwriting. That's how they felt marks versus comments, that most of the time they couldn't read the comments anyway, so that's why they didn't matter. That they should not take late marks off of things. No, I don't think that there should be due dates. I think that we should have the whole semester to hand things in, which I think is really interesting because that's kind of the system I have in my class. Students hand things in late all of the time, and I mark them for them because a lot of the time I'm just happy to see it. And believe me, that system doesn't work. So I spend a lot of time at the end of the semester marking stuff that I handed to them at the beginning. The girl who talked about the fact that she wouldn't do things, she only does things if she wants to, also wrote, and I thought this was really interesting, and again goes towards why I think that her self-esteem might be a little bit too high, that she thought late marks were great, because if you finally got something handed in, you should get extra marks for it. And so that's not what late marks are. I meant as in take away, and she was the only one in the class that stated that. So again, I think her self-esteem might be a little bit too high if she actually thought that question meant, if you finally hand something in, should I give you extra credit for it? So again, something to think about for later on in life. So I said that this question was the most telling one because it helped me to identify a mean girl that I didn't realize existed in my class. And I also started to take note of how other students acted around this student, and I realized that she sits by herself, which I thought that maybe she had done, so she could pay attention in class, and she was absent fairly often, so I thought maybe, she was isolating herself to get things done and get caught up. Now I'm starting to think that no one wanted to sit beside her, and that might be why she was so isolated. So something, as I said, to think about. So this question was the most telling because you'll notice there's no similarities for this question. Also, another thing that, as I said, I noticed is that my mean girls, whether I think they have low self-esteem or high self-esteem, their marks aren't good at all. Now I have 4 mean girls, 3 of them are failing. One of them has got a 65, which isn't stellar in a class that's personal like management. And my girls that I want my girls to be like, all of their marks are really, really good. And you'll notice that, as I said, their comments are very positive. They see the relevance in due dates, they see the relevance in late marks, and they use them again to their advantage and as a tool. So again, I think their self-esteem is right there in the middle, which my research told me right from the beginning. So then meeting day 4, because I didn't have to take a personal or a day for today, I got to come to the 4th meeting that was held, was talking to Jack Whitehead. And so I told him about the fact that I had my breakdown. I took him through the journey that we just went through in a much quicker manner. And I told him that I talked to my students. And his suggestion was to share with my class, again, my journey, and also to share with the mean girls kind of what I thought about them. I haven't done that because I don't think that that's going to help my mean girls. If anything, I think it's going to, the ones that have the low self-esteem, break them down more. But he also talked about the fact that basically what my students had said would lead me to my answers. And at the time I thought, no, it's not. That's why I'm having a breakdown still. But now that I'm looking back at it, I've learned that it kind of is leading me to my answers. So when I return to school after my mat leave, I plan to have lessons and ideas about cell phones in general, and teaching my students how they are linked to your self-esteem, how cell phones rule your life, how cell phones can be used as a tool, or how cell phones can be dangerous for you, the bullying that takes place during cell phones, with cell phones, how the media that you see on your cell phone actually affects your mood, whether you realize that it is or not. Most of the things that we see on the pop-ups or in the ads tell us that we're not good enough. That's how advertising works. Or on Facebook, you'll notice that the things that get the most likes are the horrible, horrible pictures of young children who have had dangerous things happen to them. That's what's going on in my life, on my cell phone, and I can only imagine that teenagers are looking at things that are more relevant to themselves, but they're still negative. So I'm hoping to educate my students more about cell phone usage. And that's why I commented in the last presentation that I think videotaping them would be a huge tool for that, so that they can see what they look like during a lesson, and what the classroom looks like with regards to cell phones, because I don't think they're aware of the fact that while someone's presenting to them, they're on their cell phone constantly. I want to continue with positive marking. I think I have a lot to learn with regards to marking and building up my student self-esteem with that. And I think now, as I've put them on this side of the screen, that if I can look at those 2 things in more depth, then again the mean girls are going to start to self-recognize as well as learn how to not be mean girls in the classroom. So that's my hope with it. We'll see when I go back how it works. And I also found this quote when I was going through making my presentation this morning, because, right, that's when I did it. On the very first day, I highlighted this quotation from Teacher Hub. Am I a bad teacher? I don't think so, but I certainly am not the best that I can be. I'm learning through, and I'm willing to take a good hard look in the mirror and correct my mistakes. So that's kind of where I've gotten to. That should be I'm learning though. And this to me was my BART experience this time. So you'll notice that the research seemed to be huge. And if I'm allowed to come back to Burn another time, or if it runs again, I plan to make the A, the action, the huge part. So less research, trusting that I know the problems in my classroom and looking at different ways to fix them versus trying to find the research about how to fix them. So how do I plan to do that? By taking this personal inventory, which I used to use all of the time, where I asked, who is your favorite role model in life? If you're afraid of walking across a steel beam that's 20 feet up in the air, all of these questions that I was using to get to know my students that realistically at the end of the day, I don't care about. And I'm going to make my own handout that talks about the questions that I ask my students. And I'm going to try and make their learning individual based on the questions that they answered for my research.